Welcome to the show. Glad to have you with us on this beautiful Tuesday. I'm Sean Stiers. Jesse Stiers is here. We are both wearing our spectacles here today as we get set for a full-fledged, full-bore 2-hour show here tonight. We've got it's luxurious this week after all these short shows we've had the last couple of weeks. We have 4 full 2-hour shows this week. Friday, we are going to be just 1 hour because we found out today the Stephen Cubs are going to be playing a doubleheader, so they are going to start a bit earlier than usual on Friday. So that's what the rest of the week looks like. How are you today, Jesse Stiers?
It's a beautiful day out here in Cleveland. Sunny, 70 degrees. It's like not sweating weather, but you can still go outside. I plan to take the dogs on a nice walk after we get done with the show tonight, but can't complain. A little bit busy of a day at work, but, we're here now.
We are here, and we're here to talk some Notre Dame football. We're also going to talk a Notre Dame opponent today, kind of a little summer series kind of thing. Syracuse is on the docket today. Old friend of the show, Brian Higgins, will join us at 5:30-ish to talk some Syracuse. We'll get an update on Steve Angeli, what's going on with him. Syracuse was pretty good when Steve Angeli was playing last year. After he got hurt, not so much, I have to say, if you remember what happened. They were 3-1 with Angeli playing. The only loss was to Tennessee. Of course, they knocked off Clemson, and then he got hurt during that Clemson game, and they lost every game the rest of the way. Yes, Tommy, it'll be live. Not that it matters, because it's not like even when I have people on live, people ask questions or anything like that in the YouTube chat, but it is going to be a live guest today. No pre-recording with Brian Higgins. DC Irishman says he just wanted to say it was great to meet me being Sean, in the DC metro system. And he said he was sad he missed the shout out live yesterday, but he was listening, got to hear it riding into the metro this morning. Boom. Thank you very much, Justin. Great to meet you as well. Great to have you in here live. Maybe he's riding the metro system right now, underground, under DC. Great weather in DC last week. I guess it was pretty rainy before I was in DC, and then we brought some nice weather in last week. So there it is. All right, topic du jour today, villainy in college football. I started, I've been thinking about this for a while. Is Notre Dame kind of back to being a full-fledged villain right now after they sort of dabbled for a time being a feel-good story under Marcus Freeman? He took them to the national championship, felt like all the vibes were pretty good. But then, with everything that happened at the end of last season, it felt like things really ignited and kind of blew up. I'm curious to see what you think about this, Jesse, and what Notre Dame fans think about this as well.
Yeah, I think that really what this boils down to is, Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame. I believe that they're two kind of separate conversations. I think Marcus Freeman is the hero, but Notre Dame is ultimately becoming a villain again. I don't know if they're quite there yet, but they are on a fast track to becoming a villain.
I think I feel that way again because, again, Notre Dame has long been one of the most polarizing teams in college football for a long time. It really, like the polarization, we've talked about this before. You've got the New York Yankees. You've got the Dallas Cowboys. You've got the Los Angeles Lakers. I think that's probably the NBA team. And you could probably make that any, that's just traditionally. Again, you could probably make that any team LeBron James plays for becomes even more polarizing. But those three teams, in terms of the big three professional sports, and then in college football, it's Notre Dame. They've kind of always fit that bill. I would agree with that, Sean. Celtics probably interchangeable with the Los Angeles Lakers because, like back in the heyday of Magic and Bird, I was much more on the Lakers side, and I was not a Bird guy. I was not a McHale guy. I was not a Parrish guy, or Danny Ainge. He just, annoyed you and got under your skin. So I was very Boston Celtics, and I think the Celtics probably fit that bill as well. But Notre Dame definitely is the polarizing. Can you think of another team as polarizing as Notre Dame in college football, Jess?
I mean, it used to be Alabama, but I think that Ohio State is really, become polarizing. But the thing that makes Notre Dame's villain status a bit different from the Alabamas or the Ohio States is people root against Notre Dame because really primarily their brand is enormous. Their fan base is national, coast to coast. The media attention always feels, disproportionate, just like you were talking about with like the Cowboys, the Yankees, the Celtics, the Lakers of the world. And I think most importantly, the school carries kind of this perception of excellence or exceptionalism, basically, at the end of the day. Notre Dame thinks it's Notre Dame because of the standard that they've set for themselves.
You think you're better than me? Like that whole.
So, like, when Notre Dame is good, the neutrals kind of enjoy the story. But when Notre Dame's a legit national championship threat, that's when many of the neutrals start to root against Notre Dame.
Things turn again. Yeah, that's right. I mean, to me, it's like things are just that much more interesting when Notre Dame football is good. Yeah, I mean, I think you can make the case that college football is more interesting when the Miami Hurricanes are good as well. And when they're both good at the same time, you literally had head-to-head and arguments based on that last year. I think that helped. But a lot of what has soured kind of came from that. Because, but to your point, they are a national brand with fan bases on both coasts as well as the Midwest. And Notre Dame is, by especially the haters, is assumed to have all these advantages, like we heard Dabo Sweeney talking about it, because of independence and the TV contract, the 1 foot in, 1 foot out with the ACC. And then you throw in the fact that they're the only college football team with their own movie, for that matter, Rudy, along with polarizing coaches of the past like Charlie Weiss and Brian Kelly. And Brian Kelly definitely didn't help anything. Charlie Weiss didn't help anything with the decided schematic advantage that everyone liked to throw in his face and use against him. And they still bring up from time to time, 20 plus years later. But pretty much forever, you either love Notre Dame or you hate Notre Dame. There's just no in between. But then Marcus Freeman comes along, and he's this coach with this fresh personality, that aura that we haven't seen before at Notre Dame, especially in this century. You throw in the fact that he's got the chiseled chin and the, like the magazine cover smile and all that stuff. He's literally doing magazine photo shoots. It's like, what's not to like about Marcus Freeman? Not a lot. He's killing it in recruiting. He's had some early stumbles on the field, but then he takes Notre Dame on a miraculous run to the national championship game. And it felt like even the Notre Dame haters had a hard time hating the Irish at that point. And, you heard a lot of them say as much. And Notre Dame kind of rode that feel-good wave for, the better part of 9 or 10 months, but then it all just blew up with all the back and forth with Miami and the ACC in November at the end of the regular season and the weekly college football playoff rankings. And, if you were predisposed not to like Notre Dame, you dug in even harder and you just lobbed the volleys at them. And then they opt out of a meaningless bowl game. Pete Bavacqua goes on his, does his press conference and goes on his media tour. And then you throw in the misconceptions by a lot of people about, what happened with USC. And it just feels like it's full throat all over again. A lot more anti-Notre Dame stuff right now than ever.
Yeah, it's just crazy because imagine had Notre Dame made the playoffs. I think that they would be considered more of a villain because people would have said they got special treatment. Miami deserved to be in over them. Why did Notre Dame make it when they lost head-to-head? So, I know everything that kind of came after Notre Dame not making the playoff and everything that's gone on with USC since the offseason. But I really think if Notre Dame made the playoff, we'd be having an even deeper conversation about this. But it's a tough spot to be in because of, like you said, when Marcus Freeman came to Notre Dame and they were, they weren't average, they were above average, but they weren't where they are right now. They were 9-10 wins a season, okay, I like Marcus Freeman. He's easy to root for. Even when they made their run to the national championship, it was like, oh, look at Notre Dame. They're kind of overachieving. They're knocking down some big opponents, and they're led by someone like Marcus Freeman, who is so likable. So, Marcus Freeman, in my eyes, is still the hero at the end of the day.
And I think, and obviously in all Notre Dame fans' eyes, right? Like, I don't think I don't think Notre Dame fans are going to say, yeah, we're villains. Marcus Freeman's a villain by any means.
Yeah, and so, under Marcus Freeman, I think Notre Dame initially became one of college football's easiest brands to kind of cheer for because of how prominent they were, but the success wasn't necessarily there at the highest level. Freeman is young, charismatic, widely respected. He's the opposite of Brian Kelly, really, if you want to, kind of sum it up on where Brian Kelly left and where Marcus Freeman entered. But then Notre Dame started recruiting at a high level. They started making deep playoff runs. They started winning big postseason games. They're reasserting themselves on that national level. And so I think it's putting a lot of fans in a tough spot, or not fans, because what I consider fans are people that root for Notre Dame. I think it puts the bipartisan fans in a tough spot because Marcus Freeman is so easy to root for, so easy to like. He's a great coach. He did that interview with Josh Pate. Even Josh Pate was like, I came away, I think, with a different opinion on Marcus Freeman. But then there's still the tradition side of Notre Dame, and the Notre Dame from the 90s and from the 80s, and maybe a little bit there in the early 2000s when Brady Quinn was still here. And so now we're seeing the teeter-totter kind of shift back the other way, and it makes it hard because it's like, well, I like Marcus Freeman and the way the program is run, but I don't want to see Notre Dame win a national championship.
And I think that's kind of it. Marcus Freeman has at least put some polish on the Notre Dame for a lot of the haters. I do. Facilitate says the media sensationalism from last season's playoff controversy is by no means representative of college football fans. To an extent,
I kind of disagree.
And that's what I say. I mean, how do you separate real life from Twitter? Because like my Twitter feed, I see so much back and forth between Notre Dame fans and fans of other teams going on. Like anytime a Notre Dame fan tries to put any kind of, positive spin or whatever on anything, there's again, Twitter is not real life. I get that. But people who are actually on Twitter, they're fans as well. And you definitely see a ton of venom directed at them toward Notre Dame in that app.
So here's, I think, the best way to put it. When people aren't going to, when an opportunity arises, like the controversy that happened last season with the college football playoff, with USC, with, not being in a conference, I don't think people outwardly are going to talk bad about Notre Dame, but when an opportunity comes, everyone comes out of the woodwork and loves to kick Notre Dame when they're down or when there's an opportunity to kick Notre Dame. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like no one's outwardly looking for ways to take shots at Notre Dame, but when an opportunity arises, everyone's going to get their jabs and their hooks and their haymakers in when the opportunity presents itself. I think that's the best way to sum it up.
Slow-hanging fruit. Absolutely. And I think that between again, like the Hornets' nest was kind of kicked when Notre Dame opted out of the bowl game. That's what really rankled so many feathers. Again, you think you're better than this. It's like you're opting out of the bowl game. Again, it's not Notre Dame's obligation to entertain America in a meaningless bowl game. Plenty of people would have wanted to see them play in that bowl game, but it's not Notre Dame's obligation to accept the invitation to that bowl game. They got an ACC spot, and I think as we talked about a couple of weeks ago, Notre Dame opting out actually made things better for ACC coaches. But again, remember what kind of, between the USC stuff, it's been 3 weeks ago now, between the USC stuff and then the ACC meetings beginning and the reports about anonymous coaches and athletic directors being mad at Notre Dame and all that kind of stuff, there's been a lot flying around over the last few weeks directed at Notre Dame. Now it's died down, obviously, more recently. But like Tommy says, Pete Bavacqua doesn't show the backbone and willingness to be a villain. Like, he doesn't necessarily have to, because again, I think that when he did that press conference and then, the media tour along with it, when he's on all these different shows, I think that people were like, okay, like you really want to keep going down this road, that, that again, that stirred a lot of people up and tick people off. So even if Pete Bavacqua was not trying to play the villain, he became a villain, I think, in a lot of eyes, just by trying to defend what Notre Dame was doing. And specifically, a lot of people were really upset about him being mad at the ACC, when really so many people from the outside view the ACC as being this, big helping hand, some kind of savior for Notre Dame. When obviously, if you ask most Notre Dame fans, like, they're tired of the ACC, or at least a good portion of Notre Dame fans are.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest misconception about the whole arrangement is that the ACC is doing everything for Notre Dame, rather than Notre Dame is also doing, a good bit for the ACC. But that's how every deal should work. Both sides should come out of the arrangement feeling like they've won, and that's how it's been. But recently, it feels like everyone has an opinion that the ACC is doing way more for Notre Dame than Notre Dame is doing for the ACC. But those people have a lack of knowledge of the agreement that's kind of in place, and the sacrifices are the things that Notre Dame is giving up, as a part of the deal as well.
David in the chat says, I wear that national hatred toward Notre Dame as a badge of honor. We're extremely relevant, much better than the alternative. And I think that that's the view that most Notre Dame fans would have, like they hate us because they ain't us thing, or whatever. I think that's really the only way I think you can look at it. And this, as Bear says in the chat, independence. This is obviously becoming a much bigger talking point all the time, because as soon as Notre Dame was left out of the playoff last year, what'd you hear? Well, if you were in a conference, you would have made the playoff. You need to join a conference. And, with all the stuff going back to the comments from anonymous ACC coaches and athletic directors a couple of weeks ago, first thing, of course, people did, again, knock that low-hanging fruit, started talking about Notre Dame needs to join the Big Ten. They need to join a conference. They need to be all in. I mean, that sticks in the craw of just about everybody out there, because obviously the masses are going to the big conferences and everyone thinks that you need to be in a conference. I mean, again, really, Notre Dame just needs to continue to hold out, because in another year or two, whenever it happens, the college football playoff is going to expand again. The only question is it going to go to 16 or is it going to go to 24? Either one of those helps Notre Dame's case and helps protect Notre Dame's independence, especially if it goes to 24. But really, that's all Notre Dame needs to do, is continue to hold out right now. When the playoff expands, they're going to get even more benefit, and it helps their case to remain independent, especially if they get rid of those conference championship games. You take away the biggest argument of anything college football playoff related if they get rid of those conference championship games. That helps Notre Dame immensely.
Yeah, and I think independence ultimately is everyone's biggest grudge. But, I guess, a lot of people I feel like are still upset that, between this independence and ACC situation at the end of the season, like what was Pete Bavacqua supposed to do? He can't just blow up the agreement with no backup plan. And so that's the part that is so, I guess, the question that I always come back to is, what was he supposed to do to make Notre Dame fans feel good about sticking up to them? Because it's not like you can just blow up on the ACC and say, okay, we're taking, our ball and we're leaving. Like, at the end of the day, just like the ACC needs Notre Dame still needs the ACC to fill most of its schedule,
right.
Predominantly.
Especially right now, in this interim period where we're waiting to see if the playoff is going to expand.
Right. And so, like, I get there being frustration, but what ultimate thing could Bavacqua do that would have fixed everything in that moment? I don't know what that is, but I think long-term there's definitely going to be some sort of solution. And as the playoff expands, it becomes less and less relevant, because it's just going to become a pool of teams that are playing against each other, and ultimately 24 of them qualify to play at the end of season tournament.
Exactly. Sean Stewart in the chat says, like Brian Driscoll says, what rule are they breaking by being independent? And that's like, what benefit does it serve for Notre Dame not, for Notre Dame not to be independent? Like, what does it help? Like, okay, so now Notre Dame is in a conference, and so in everybody else's mind, you're playing by the same rules, I guess, as everybody else. But again, like, what does it actually serve? Like, look at Miami. They didn't win Miami wasn't even in their conference championship game last year. Nobody argued about them being in the college football playoff, right? Nobody was pounding the table for Duke, who actually won the playoff game that they had. So what difference did it make if you were in a conference or not? There are only 4 Power 4 teams who win their conference championship game. And last year, only 3 of them got into the college football playoff. Everybody else came from a non-Power 4 conference, was not a Power 4 conference champion. So what difference does it make if Notre Dame is independent or not? There's really no argument for it. Like, what it actually helps.
Yeah, it doesn't, especially when Miami got in. And, even in the current playoff system, like you said, maximum 4 out of the 12 teams are going to get in because they won, their conference championship. And not even, all of them made it last year. And so the fact that, independence comes into play, it doesn't really matter. And ultimately, I've said this before, if you won a lottery for $10 million, would you rather keep the $10 million for yourself or split it 10 different ways and only take home $1 million? Everyone's going to say that they'd rather have the 10 million.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And, like, fans don't think about it that way, but those athletic directors know it. They know the advantage that Notre Dame has by doing that, but they're also willing to sign up for the guarantee of the big check, of the consistent money by being in a conference. But it's just insane. Notre Dame and Ohio State played for the national championship, and Notre Dame took home almost 10 times more money at the end of the college football playoff than what Ohio State took home, the actual national champion, because all of that revenue that Ohio State and the other Big Ten teams made was split amongst the rest of the teams in the conference. But of course, what makes up for it for those Big Ten teams is they have the much bigger TV contracts, so they're guaranteed, more consistent money from that. Brian NY in the chat says Power 4 powerhouses won't schedule Notre Dame anymore. Too risky, and likely won't allow the mids to schedule us either. Again, the playoff expands to 24. That takes away this. It's much more likely that the powerhouses are going to schedule Notre Dame. What has them scared right now is you've got a 12-team playoff. We were talking about the Texas situation on yesterday's show. If the playoffs expand, that's going to, again, it does nothing but help Notre Dame in its ability to schedule going forward.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's concern is what Lincoln Riley did. You can't take a loss in the middle of the season to a team that you're going to lose to, or you've historically lost to, every season outside of like 2 out of the last 10 years.
Tommy says they'll just argue they shouldn't schedule big games due to seeding. You don't know that. Like, what all of these conferences are talking about right now is they want to continue to schedule these big games because of the revenue that they generate. So, like, could that happen? Sure. But we'll see once the playoffs expand. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen, but as of right now, USC backed out because of where the playoff format is right now. There's a greater chance that that USC is going to be back on the schedule if the college football playoffs expand. There's a greater chance that Texas stays on if the college football playoffs expand. Tommy says people are great at moving. So, I mean, if that happens, then that forces Notre Dame's hand. If these big schools really do stop scheduling Notre Dame, then that's what ultimately, plays a part in pushing Notre Dame toward a conference, is if they're forced into that situation because they can't schedule these games with other, with Power 4 schools. But as of right now, everybody still wants to play. I won't say everybody. A lot of teams still want to play Notre Dame because of the revenue that it generates. They know that Notre Dame is going to sell tickets. They know that they can put that in the premium tier and charge 3 to 4 times for those tickets when Notre Dame comes to town compared to your average game.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the scenario that you're talking about is less likely to happen than the expanded college football playoff. And if there's an expanded college football playoff, what the requirements or the standard is going to be is you're going to play quality opponents every week, and Notre Dame's always going to be a quality opponent. And then I think at that point too, if we do expand, I think the parameters of conferences are going to become weaker and weaker as well. And so I just is there likelihood that happens, that teams, stop scheduling Notre Dame? Sure. But I think that the chances of expansion in the college football playoff are more likely to happen than, teams basically forcing Notre Dame's hand.
All right, we are going to take a break with that. Brian Higgins is going to join us here in just a couple of minutes, the host of the 315 with Brian Higgins on his YouTube channel. We're going to talk a little Syracuse, get an update on Steve Angeli, see how things are going up there in Syracuse land. Of course, the team that Notre Dame ends the regular season with Thanksgiving weekend. That's going to be a little bit different trip to Syracuse, New York, compared to the West Coast, like Notre Dame has been accustomed to for the last 2.5 decades or so. Brian Higgins coming up next on a weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com. We continue with Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com and the smiling face, if you're watching on the YouTube channel right now, that you see at the other end is the one and only Brian Higgins. He covers Syracuse football, basketball, lacrosse, a lot of other things as well, Syracuse related. He's the host of the 315 with Brian Higgins on his YouTube channel. How you doing today, my friend? It's been a while.
It's been a minute, Sean. Always great to hear from you. No questions we'll be taking about that lax semifinal game. We're trying to put that one in the past. That got a little sideways there late. Notre Dame's a hell of a team there. Am I looking to hear that? Were you guys talking? Is Notre Dame a college football villain?
We are.
Is that a question?
That see
what
perspective, right? I think you'd have a hard. I think you sort of have a hard time convincing some Notre Dame people of that.
Yeah, like Yankees fans don't think they're the villain. Duke basketball fans don't think they're the villain, and Cowboys fans don't think they're the villain.
Right?
You guys are all the villain. That's the way. Syracuse lacrosse fans are the villain in lacrosse due to the years of history. It's the way it works. It's fun when you're winning. But you never like to think of yourself in that role, but embrace it. That's how it goes.
That's what I say. And good call on Duke, by the way. I didn't think about, because I used some of those other examples you were talking about in other sports. I did, Duke basketball, obviously, top of the villain list.
Oh yeah,
you might put UConn up there these days. You're not going
to have to twist a Syracuse guy's arm to put UConn on the villain list. Where I'm with you there.
Well, let me ask you this, though, because we were talking, obviously Syracuse is part of the ACC. The reason Notre Dame and Syracuse have played the last couple of years, and really for the last, going on 13 years, I guess, is because of that ACC arrangement. You sit there as a part of, the bigger ACC at large. Do you think if Syracuse were given the chance to schedule a 12-year home and home with Notre Dame the way Clemson did about this time last year, do you think Syracuse would take that?
I think you'd be stupid not to, right? I mean, that's especially in this era where revenue is highly important. Like when Notre Dame shows up, you're going to sell your building, right? Like that's money in your pocket. Like Syracuse's football seasons, as we've known, there's been some highlights, but there's been an awful lot of bleh.
Yeah.
And like the years when it's bleh on Thanksgiving Saturday and you have a home game, like you could roll a tumbleweed through the place. I don't know what Syracuse is going to do this year. This season could go, I'm sure we'll get into it. This season could go in 8 million different directions. I have no idea. What I'm certain of is that Notre Dame game is going to be sold out on Thanksgiving, regardless of what Syracuse is doing. And, you'd prefer it to go better than last year, but you can't. If Notre Dame said, "Hey, do you want to play every year?" and you said no, that just proves you're not willing to be serious about big time college football.
I mean, that's how it feels to me. It feels like there are still a lot of schools who would jump on that. Now, obviously, they're going to be, we've seen high profile like USC that doesn't want that right now, and I think that there's talk about Texas potentially pulling out, but everyone's going to have their own agendas that they're trying to protect. But at the end of the day, Pete Bavacqua talked about this when I don't know how much. You said you heard some of what we were talking about. You might not have got on when we were talking about when he did the press conference after Notre Dame opted out of the bowl, and it was good. But he talked about the fact that when Notre Dame goes on the road in the ACC, most of those games sell out. I think it's 90% of those games sell out. And not only do they sell out, but schools are also putting Notre Dame in that premium tier, ticket tier. And that makes schools a lot of money when Notre Dame comes to town.
Well, and especially now when it's rev share, it's NIL, it's all the stuff you have to do. It's all about the money right now. I mean, what did we just see? Was that today, last night, when that Momcilovic kid ends up going to Kentucky for basketball, and the reported number is $6 million? Like if Notre Dame showing up is going to put money in your pocket, you have to say yes. But at the same time, like you can't do what Syracuse did last year. Like that was the most embarrassing game I've ever seen of Syracuse football. Obviously, there was extenuating circumstances,
Sure.
but at least give it a go, right? Like don't do that. Like if you're gonna do that, then But if you're gonna have a real game, when Notre Dame came to the Dome a few years ago, Notre Dame won convincingly, but the build up to that, it was a good build up. Garrett Schrader kind of got hurt as the game progressed, and they were a little bit off kilter because of it. But that was a fun lead in. This past year, the season was going horribly. It was not a fun lead in, but hey, it's fun when Notre Dame's on the football schedule because of the Villian thing, right? That's why it's fun.
Yeah,
it's fun because you as Syracuse fans or whomever, you envision your team as the good guy. Well, if the other team has the black cat, let's go. That's fun.
Ride with it. That's right. And I mean, let's be honest. One, I don't think anyone saw 70-7 coming, and two, there's no place to go but up if you're Syracuse.
God, you'd hope. I mean, 21-0 before Notre Dame had the ball was, I mean, it was so bad, it was compelling. The problem was, in order to get to my post-game show, then we had 3 more hours. I'm like, well, the interesting part's done. Can we?
Well, but again, it's like going back to the whole black hat and the Villian thing. There were plenty of people who weren't watching that game, who all they did was look at the box score afterwards and cherry picked. Oh, well, Notre Dame, couldn't even throw for 100 yards. It's like, well, as you said, there were 3 touchdown scores scored before C.J. Carr even took a snap.
Yeah, if Notre Dame wanted to, and that, Marcus Freeman was being nice. If Notre Dame wanted, they literally could have scored 100 in that game if they kept their foot on the gas the whole game. And I don't think that's hyperbole. That game could have been 100-0 if they felt like it. They were being friendly to stop at 70. So
I agree.
Thank you, Coach. That was like a tip of the cap to a cap of you to ease off and only drop 70 in the game.
Thanks for the mercy. He's Brian Higgins, covering Syracuse for the 315 with Brian Higgins, his YouTube channel. Well, let's talk a little Steve Angeli, because when Steve Angeli was playing last year for Syracuse, things were actually going pretty well. They were 3-1 with Steve, of course, former Notre Dame guy, as the starting quarterback. Then he tears his Achilles against Clemson. So I guess for starters with that, do they expect him to be healthy for the opener this year? Is that kind of the expectation right now? I
think so. There's videos out there of him doing stuff. He obviously has a big protective sleeve or something on the calf and the leg. In spring ball, now obviously that's now 2+ months ago at this point, he was out there doing a little, but his mobility in April was still clearly significantly compromised. So I think that's what we're going to find out. Honestly, it's the main question I have of training camp and the parts we're going to get a glimpse of. Does he look right just literally dropping back? He's not like a scooting around quarterback to begin with, so it's not like he needs to be sprinting down the field, but does he look right in the pocket just moving? And I think that's going to be the biggest question of August to get ready for the season. And then we'll see, because last year, Steve came in, you guys know the tale, loses the quarterback battle, spring transfer, comes to Syracuse. They made a show of a quarterback competition. It was clear as day quickly that he was going to be the quarterback over Ricky Collins, who has since transferred out. And first game, he was a little rough. Tennessee game, that was a big environment. He was a little rough, young team. Second game, it was kind of okay. Third game, they got in this weird game against UConn. They're down. Third quarter, the light turned on, and they got cooking. Next week against Clemson, they blew them off the field.
Yeah.
They could not guard the passing game with Angeli. And then whatever it was, I think late third quarter, if memory serves, he goes down. You've never seen a more clear as day Achilles injury with how he's grabbing and everything that went down. And you just, you felt the lights turn off on the season. You had some hope because you had an LSU backup in Collins to come in. It became clear very quickly why Fran Brown went after Angeli in the spring, and that he knew what he had and he knew what he didn't had, and it just without a quarterback the rest of the season turned into a disaster. And I know Steve was so upset because, man, he wanted to play that game in South Bend, because that, I don't think out of any ill will. I think he just wanted to prove himself in his old stadium. So it's,
why wouldn't you?
Yeah, it's too bad that didn't happen. The good news, right? At least Notre Dame's Thanksgiving. So regardless of what Steve looks like in September. Hopefully, young body, right? Achilles, he'll be 14-ish months out by the Notre Dame game. Hopefully he's locked back in by then.
Well, they obviously had a lot of other injuries besides just Angeli, but what do you think those next 8 games look like if just Angeli is healthy and able to play?
Oh, I mean, it was a tough schedule last year. Like, they did play Miami in Miami. There was some, obviously the Notre Dame game wasn't going to be easy just because Steve was there. It certainly wouldn't have been 70-7, but that was, do you really think you're going into those places and winning those games? Probably not. You're 3-1 though, with a quarterback that's really starting to click. He was leading the country in passing through 4 games, like Kyle McCord had done the year before at that point. I think you're looking at a bowl game now, which is crazy to say looking at how some of those scores went, but I have never seen, and we've seen some Syracuse seasons, Sean. I have never seen a season go as off the rails as that. Like, the Greg Robinson era going back 20 years was bad the entire time. There was no redeeming qualities about it. He beat Notre Dame in a game that still makes no sense. But he won 10 games in 4 years. Nothing good happened, and it was bad all the time. The last 8 games of last year were worse than any of that. It was so non-competitive, and I'm hoping Fran Brown learned some lessons from it. I think I don't want to say they were tanking because you're not tanking in college sports, but I think Fran had mentally turned the page on the season. He knew they couldn't accomplish the goals they wanted, and I think he was, thinking recruiting and thinking how they're going to get better, and it just let the season, college football, you still need to develop guys, but you're getting crushed by so much. I don't know what they got out of it, so I'm hoping Fran took that to heart. I know he did with the quarterbacks because he went in the portal and got some lower-level guys that at least played. So, all right, if Steve can't go, you got some guys. You don't have nothing. But, yeah, I think Steve healthy, you're sitting 6-6 at worst. It was a tough schedule, but that would not have happened.
You think if Angeli has to miss any time or, whatever, like, do you feel like they're better off at
100%
with a quarterback depth chart than they were last year?
Yeah, which is random because going back now a year and a half ago, so Kyle McCord has just the best passing season in Syracuse history by a wide margin. But the scenario that led to him coming from Ohio State, that's once in a lifetime, how that all worked out.
Mm-hmm.
So Fran goes in the portal. They're in the mix. Obviously, McCord had a great year. You've got a lot of people to look at. They get Ricky Collins, who'd been a 4-star guy. He's sitting on LSU's bench. Now, you look at the guys he was sitting behind, like, all right, he's sitting behind Jaden Daniels. I can understand why he's not in the field. You think, all right, LSU's been churning these guys out. Garrett Nussmeier had decided to come back to school. He's not going to get on the field this year. So, okay. Now, Fran will talk up. Like, Fran's starting quarterback is the number 2 guy in the program, is the way he handles it. And we saw that all year with McCord, and it never wavered. Last year, we saw it like Ricky was the number 2 guy until the day he wasn't. Then Steve was the number 2 guy till the day he wasn't. Then Ricky was the number 2 guy again, and then it was clear he wasn't, and then they moved off it. So Fran will try to give his quarterback as much confidence as humanly possible. Collins didn't have it. He didn't have it. Now, play calling, whatever, they probably needed to change up the offense in some way. Just it didn't work. This year, you went and got a guy named Amari Odom from Kennesaw State. You might say Kennesaw State, whatever. He was a good quarterback at that level, and he started a lot of games. So at least I know this year that if Angeli's not right at the start or gets hurt again or something, the next guy up has at least played like a lot of college football.
Sure.
So I don't feel that if he gets tossed in there, you're all of a sudden going to get a complete meltdown. Like, he's not a freshman lacrosse player from Long Island that's starting in South Bend. Like, that's not happening this year. Like, lessons have been learned. Hopefully they don't need to be applied. Like, hopefully Steve starts all 12 games. That would be the best case scenario, obviously. But I think if he doesn't, I think they are better situated with experience behind him this year, certainly than last. Definitely than last.
What's the biggest non-Steve Angeli question that they have going into this year?
Man, Steve's almost every question I got going into this year. Like, Fran shook up his coaching staff last year. Like, everything worked in year one, right? You're 10-3.
Right.
McCord, like, it was my God, Sean, it was so much fun. Like, that season, McCord was Like, I did shows with Kyle. He was phenomenal to deal with, a total pro. Like, everything was great. And you beat Miami in the Dome on Thanksgiving Saturday to end the year. It was a fantastic season. Last year, you're 3-1. You beat Clemson. Like, it's their first ever win in Death Valley. You're like, wow, Fran's got it again. Like, he's doing it again. And then it all falls apart. Well, he technically didn't fire, but, call it whatever you want. He moved off Elijah Robinson, his longtime friend, great recruiter as a defensive coordinator. He goes against Vince Carras from Toledo. So, he's making moves outside his bubble. I liked seeing that from Fran. He hires Juan Castillo as the O-line coach. The O-line was not great last year. Castillo was the Eagles O-line coach in kind of like the McNabb era where they had some really good O-lines, and he's been kind of all over the place since then. So I think maybe that will help. It's not necessarily the personnel other than Angeli this year. I'm looking at, all right, what's the defensive scheme going to look like? Because it just didn't make a lot of sense to me the last few years scheme-wise. You had better talent 2 years ago, and they plugged some holes last year. It was iffy. And then the offensive line's been a mess for a few years. They've got like a ton of, like, Fran got a bunch of guys in the portal 2 years ago. He's recruited a bunch of guys. He clearly likes huge guys. I mean, these guys are massive guys. They're 6'6", 6'7", 320, 330. If Castillo can turn that into, can find 5 and turn that into something, I think, honestly, to me, that's the main thing. You got a shot. You got a shot if they can do that. If you can't, then you have a quarterback coming off an Achilles behind a porous offensive line. That worries me. if the line's good, like you've seen Angeli, like the ball's out quick. Like he's back, the ball's out. So they don't need to be studs. Like just give them a couple seconds, ball's out, and then they'll figure it out.
Did he exceed your expectations when he was in those 4 games?
It's amazing. It was 3 games and 3 quarters. He started off by, like, he looked bad in the Tennessee game. It was worrisome. Like, we're like, oh, so we had the one guy who wasn't good enough. They went and got the second guy, and he looked bad. And then you're like, well, it is Tennessee. It's in Atlanta. Okay. Then they played, I forget it, they played their FCS game in week 2, so it's whatever. But he didn't look great. Like, okay. Then the UConn game in week 3, the first half, he didn't look great. I'm like, uh-oh, this is a problem. And then the second half, he turned it on. And then the Clemson game, he was magical. Like, he was phenomenal in the Clemson game. So I'd say in less than a month, he both far was below my expectations and then exceeded my expectations in the span of about 3.5 weeks. And then, I thought after that Clemson, I mean, not after the game, he was clearly done for the year by then. But third quarter of that game, you're like, what? Wow. He may not be Kyle McCord, but he's pretty darn good. They got a shot to have another fun year. And then, unfortunately, one misstep or whatever it was, non-contact Achilles, and there we are.
You mentioned that 10-3 in Fran Brown's first year. They win a bowl game, and the whole thing. And you talked about how fun it was, and obviously a lot of people were fired up. Did he lose any supporters? Any shine off him after the kind of what last year turned out to be?
Yeah, I mean, last year didn't help, right? Like. It was one of those things where Fran's a guy, he does some crazy stuff, right? Like the winners get washed and all the stuff that he did. When you're 10-3, that all works. That all plays. Last year, he noticeably toned that down as the season went along with good reason. He knew what the deal was, so he was not saying anything boastful as the year went along. Yeah, I think some people turn as they do. It's year 3 here. And it's his 3rd year ever as a head coach. I don't want to say this is a make or break year. That's way too far. But, all right, we've had one great, like, all-time great year and one all-time terrible year. This year feels just kind of like a bellwether. Like, where are we on the scale? Was the first year of the Mirage? Was the second year of the Mirage? I honestly don't know right now. We know Syracuse's history. Like, realistically, 7-8 wins, and then you vacillate from there. Hi, Viv. Welcome, Viv, to your show.
Superstar in the house.
Okay, Viv, I'll be right there. But I don't know. I think this year's a pretty big bellwether year because we just don't know. I don't know what to believe after the first 2 years.
For those on listening on radio or podcast later, Brian's daughter just bounced into the room and brought even more insight for us.
Yeah, Vivian has to go pee if anyone's.
Okay.
We gotta. Okay, there's
Oh,
some more
all right.
information.
Well,
Say we got.
Well, there's
we-
10 going. That's awesome.
Yeah, like see, there we go. Everyone in South Bend knows all.
Everybody's emptied before dinner time.
There we go. So, well, it's I'm glad to
that's
see
good
everyone's
news.
taking care of these things.
I wanted to throw this in here. Tommy in our chat said to ask Brian, ask you if you had flashbacks to the Pitt
Oh
game
man.
2 years ago during the Notre Dame.
that Pitt game, Tommy. Okay, Viv. The Pitt game, the Pitt game was the most everything can go wrong, did go wrong game I've ever seen. And that was one where I gained a lot of respect for McCord after it because we did a show on Tuesday. So that was a Thursday night game. He played literally the worst game of his life at any level. He basically never had a bad game, to anything resembling that. And he showed up and answered every question. And then the next few weeks went out and played great. The Notre Dame game, the Pitt game was so shocking, but you knew the team was good. The Notre Dame game, and I said this at the time, I said this in the post-game show, the Notre Dame game, I've said, is the most embarrassing game in the history of Syracuse football.
I can imagine.
You put the Pitt game, you played bad, and you had 3 first half pick sixes that are all tipped. It was just weird stuff was happening. You went to Notre Dame with a freshman lacrosse player, and we're like, let's see what happens. And then the most predictable thing of all time happened. It was so on NBC, it's NBC. You're in the spotlight and you did that. You can't do that. Nobody expected him to win, but don't do that. Absolutely don't do that. So the Notre Dame game was 8 million times worse. Welcome back, Viv.
Before Viv gets your full attention and takes your headphones from you. Jerry McNamara. I imagine everyone it's amazing that his college career was 20 years ago.
Oh man, we're old.
I imagine everyone's fired up there in Orange Land about that. Though.
Yeah, it's one of these things where obviously it didn't go well. Hey, Viv, I will be right back. I'm talking to Sean now. Jerry, the thing with Jerry is he's the most beloved player in the history of the program. Carmelo has said it during the year that, hey, they like me, they love him. So if it stunk for Red, he's an alum. It didn't go well. Obviously, we all know the deal. It didn't go well. But for Jerry, I think we're all really rooting for it to go well, Sean, because can you imagine if it doesn't go well, they're going to have to fire Jerry at some point?
Oh my gosh.
Firing Red's one thing. I like Red. Red's a good dude. He wasn't the guy. He wasn't the guy. And it became evident he wasn't going to be the guy. You had to make a change. Whatever happened, you end up with Jerry. I don't know if it's going to work or not. I think we saw in this portal season, NIL is such an important thing. They missed on a couple guys. I know they really wanted that Alex Wilkins kid from Furman that ended up at Kentucky. Well, unfortunately, Syracuse doesn't have Kentucky money in NIL. So now Jerry's got maybe a roster that's maybe missing a piece or two. How does that compete in the ACC? But they did a welcome event for Jerry. At a building that in the atrium-ish area to the Dome. It's a new thing they built a couple years ago. Where it was free, but you needed tickets. Multiple thousand people showed up.
Wow.
It was a Monday. It was a Monday at 3. And multiple thousand people showed up.
Man.
Jerry still has that kind of pull. So I'll say this. I don't know if it's going to work or not. I love Jerry. Jerry's a better in-game coach than Red ever was. Red was always when they're on staff together. Jerry was more the X's and O's. Red was more the recruiter. NIL obviously throws that all up in the air.
Mm-hmm.
If Jerry works, though, this is going to be the biggest win they could have because everyone loves that guy. If it doesn't work, it's going to be the most depressing thing of all time because if they have to fire Jerry McNamara in 4 or 5 years from now, wow, that I can't even. I said this at the time. That's the risk. The risk is not hiring a guy that was 2 years at Siena. The risk is having to potentially fire the most beloved player in the history of your program.
Right.
That would be just brutal. Brutal. So we wish the best for him. He's a great dude. The crowds from Scranton, the buses from Scranton will be running back up north again, I'm sure, because his hometown emptied out every Syracuse game day for 4 years. Where everyone's rooting for him. I think he's put together an interesting roster this year that maybe is lacking a star. I think they got a lot of good players. We'll see if Melo's kid, Cayenne, can turn into a great player this year, but Jerry winning, for one, obviously great for Syracuse, but the ACC needs it too. Like, the ACC needs Syracuse to get off the mat in basketball. Like,
Yeah.
It's badly needed because, even in the last few years, it's still one of the more high profile programs in the league. And it's not good for the league to have Syracuse struggling like they have for the last 5 years.
You're right. The league needs some juice. That's for sure. Orange juice, I guess you said.
Yeah,
I didn't even mean to do that.
There we are. Vitamin C never hurt anybody.
That's right. Brian Higgins covering Syracuse. Regardless of the sport, you can check him out. He's, I've seen him talking some lacrosse. He's been spitting some lacrosse at us. Of course, football, basketball as well on the YouTube channel, the 315 with Brian Higgins. It is not hard to find. Brian, appreciate it as always. Great stuff. Take care.
All right, Sean. Always great to chat.
All right, you too. That's Brian Higgins. Let's take a timeout. When we come back, hour number 2, we'll get into some more Notre Dame football topics, rapid fire, coming up on Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Hour number 2 of the show. Glad to have you with us on a gorgeous Tuesday, weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com. I'm Sean Stiers. Jesse Stiers is popping back in. Were you able to listen to any of the entertaining Brian Higgins while you were taking care of other business?
I caught the last 5 or so minutes. I was running around doing all kinds of stuff. I made the bed. I fed the dogs. I went to the bathroom, unloaded the dishwasher. Just got a million things done.
Got all the honeydews done while I was talking with Brian there. He's always great. I think Brian is probably – I think he's number 2 on the list of regulars on this show that we've had over the years. He's been around a while. A lot of great stuff with him. And he comes from a radio background like me. And again, he's the host of the 315 with Brian Higgins, his YouTube channel. So check him out if you follow Syracuse, or if you want to follow Syracuse leading up to the end of the season. He'll always have some great insights, and a very entertaining guy as well. Let's get into some rapid fire and some Notre Dame football topics. We've got a few of them here in hour number 2 of the show. Scale of 1 to 10. Little scheduling stuff has popped up here and there throughout this show. What's your confidence Notre Dame and USC play again by the year 2030?
I'm going to give this a solid 7 out of 10. And the reason why I'm so confident is that because I think the college football playoff is going to expand. And I think with expansion, that means certain teams are going to re-enter kind of the chat. And I think that there is already internal pressure and external pressure from, USC alumni that this game needs to be played. And so at some point, I do think that this is going to be back. And I do think by 2030, we will see this rivalry recourse and get back online. I think the biggest thing right now is just USC doesn't have a true identity under Lincoln Riley. They don't know who they are or what they want to be. They're just kind of moving with the crowd, aka joining the Big Ten. And I think that at some point they'll kind of get their head back on their shoulders and realize, what it means to be USC and the longstanding tradition that it had with Notre Dame and their rivalry.
By the way, we talked a lot about, is Notre Dame a villain in the first hour of the show? Brian Higgins, again, he came on and he's like, is there even any question about this? Why is this even a topic? Of course, Notre Dame is a villain. But we didn't get to give some of our other villains of college football. I think we'll save that for Friday's show when you and Vince and I are all together. We can go through our lists of who we think, the big picture villains are in college football. Hint. Somebody USC related is on my list. I don't think he was on your list. But the answer to this particular question, confidence Notre Dame and USC will be playing again by 2030, pretty mixed bag, and it's all over the place in the chat. Andre gives it a 4. Chris gives it a 5. Robin gives it a 7. Bobo gives it a 6. Chris follows that up with, I want regular season games. Playoff games don't count for me. Playoff games, they count to an extent, but I get what you're saying, because regular season is both sides coming to the agreement that we are better together than apart. Yes, that's absolutely right. And when I was on my trip with my old Army buddies last weekend in Washington, D.C., one of them is a USC fan. So we have a lot of fun with that, of course. But guess what? The one thing that we can agree on when it comes to Notre Dame USC stuff is he believes as well, as a USC fan, that USC needs to be playing Notre Dame, that there's no excuse for USC not playing.
Where did he place the blame, though, is the biggest question.
I think that he's, he falls into some of the trap of, Notre Dame could have played that game at the beginning of the season, but he does put more of it on USC. Like we brought up, Petros Papadakis, and he definitely agrees with Petros that there is more reason to be mad at USC than there is to be mad at Notre Dame in this whole thing.
It's funny because when I was in Chicago, probably 4 weeks ago at this point, I went to a Cubs game. I was at a bar. Me and my friends had already had a few beverages of choice, and we're upstairs at Sluggers hitting, in the batting cages, and I see this guy wearing some USC gear. So I approached him and I said, what are your thoughts? Just as someone who, and I didn't come out as like a Notre Dame fan. I was like, oh, how do you feel about USC, not playing Notre Dame anymore? And at the end, he's like, man, you know a lot about this. And I was like, yeah, I'm a Notre Dame fan. But anyways, he was kind of in that same boat. He was disappointed. He was kind of, wants to believe the path that Lincoln Riley is leading them down, but ultimately kind of, said that it's kind of USC's fault at the end of the day. But there was still blame being cast on Notre Dame, and largely because of what you said. Well, why can't we just play this game to open the season in Mexico, that like it was proposed? So it's just interesting to hear the different kind of, I guess, perceptions and takes from USC fans.
No, for sure. And I think my confidence is about a 6.5. Again, my feeling is if the playoff expands, and look, Lincoln Riley said as much even before the series, I think, was officially over with. He started talking about access to the playoffs and all that kind of stuff is, one of his excuses for not playing this series anymore. And, obviously USC pointed at the stipulation that Notre Dame is included, in the playoff by being in the top 12. And that was something that came up as well. Like that was something that, my buddy Rick was not very happy about was, the provision about being in the top 12 that Notre Dame gets in if they're ranked in the top 12 and that kind of thing. But my feeling is if the college football playoff expands, there's a very good chance that Notre Dame and USC are playing by 2030. We don't know that they are going to expand. And we also don't know that USC isn't just going to pull the rug out from underneath this whole thing and decide that they do want to move on and use their Big Ten schedules as an excuse. Even though, like, if you look at their future schedules as of right now, this year's schedule, I will give them the fact that this year's schedule is tough. And if Notre Dame had been on it, it would have been very tough. And the chances I think that USC was going to make the playoff would be all but non-existent, I think, if Notre Dame was still on the schedule. So they found their out. They got out for at least the next couple of years, if not 4 years. I'm in the 6.5 range. That's my confidence that Notre Dame and Southern Cal are playing again by 2030.
So we're in similar kind of waters right now.
Yeah. I think if the playoff expands, I would push it up to a 9. That would be my confidence. So let's say the SC series isn't going to continue. Would you be in or out on Notre Dame going into a series with UCLA? What do you think about that as a potential alternative to USC?
Yeah, I think ultimately I would be out on this, but I have a special kind of caveat. I would be in to a degree. I think that what I would aim for is instead of just a series back and forth with UCLA, I would want to see basically a rotating schedule amongst 4 different teams on the West Coast. I'd like to see Oregon, Washington. You can keep your tradition with Stanford and UCLA. And if you can cycle through those 4, I think it keeps the matchups fresh. You hit different parts of the West Coast. You can be in LA 1 year, 2 years later, you could be in Oregon. 2 years later, you could be closer to Washington. And then I believe Stanford is more or less kind of central California. So I just don't think there's enough juice with UCLA, let alone. And I know that the big reason is because obviously UCLA and USC are both in Los Angeles. And so you can hit that kind of recruiting hub while you're out there. But I would like to see it replaced with big time matchups. And I'd love to see Notre Dame play Oregon in some sort of rotating schedule if they were to continue to go out west to kind of end their season.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind UCLA as a short-term alternative. You don't know exactly where they're going as a program. They have had a lot harder time than USC, staying or trying to even get to a highly consistent level. And they've had a lot of problems with their athletic department in terms of revenue and, being in a deficit and those kind of things. I would think that a series like UCLA Notre Dame would help them sell out a very big stadium in the Rose Bowl. It would be cool for Notre Dame to go back to the Rose Bowl to play UCLA. It's been a long time since Notre Dame played UCLA out there. I think 2007 was the last time Notre Dame played against UCLA in the Rose Bowl specifically. So, again, we're going on 20 years at this point. I tend to agree with what you're saying. Like, first and foremost, if UCLA would agree to take that slot in the schedule where USC was, like mid-October when it is here in South Bend, Thanksgiving weekend when it's out in Southern California, I would take that at least, a 2-year home and home type series. Long term, I don't think I want them specifically on the schedule. I like what you said about rotating through those, West Coast opponents. And maybe even, even though Arizona State isn't on the West Coast, maybe you throw in like an Arizona State from time to time, to kind of get out there west. Notre Dame has done pretty well, in terms of recruiting that area. And there is some talent in that area. Benjamin Morrison from out there, Devin Fitzgerald from out there, and others as well. So I think that there would be some benefit in that. So sure. So again, I like the idea of UCLA, but I don't want a long, 10 or 12-year contract, continuous home and home with UCLA.
Yeah, I think if you're going to replace USC, it just has to be a kind of group that you're cycling through and not just one opponent, unless it's Oregon. I would love to play Oregon every season. I think those would be phenomenal matchups. I think the fans would love that, but I don't know how realistic that actually would be. So, like, you just kind of, for lack of better terms, you're picking kind of the biggest brands out on the West Coast, and you're trying to say, okay, how can we kind of cycle through them every 2 years so it keeps it fresh for everybody?
Yeah, Brian says the conference wouldn't allow that slotting that I was talking about. I don't know. Like, they still played Purdue. I realize it was early in the season. They're playing Michigan State and Purdue this year. I mean, they all know that, again, we're not talking about an annual thing where you're slotting those in. We're only talking about, basically a couple one-offs, a home and a home. So I don't think it would be that big. And from UCLA's perspective, again, the ability to have Notre Dame in the Rose Bowl and the chance to sell out the Rose Bowl with Notre Dame coming to town, and the chance, like the enemy of your enemy is your friend, like they're both rivals of USC. So the chance for UCLA to go, hey, you USC, you're afraid to play Notre Dame. We've got Notre Dame over here. We're not afraid to play them. I think that there's something to that from the UCLA aspect of it. All right. On 3 did a biggest question for every top 25 college football team this season. Here's their top question for Notre Dame. They said the question is, with Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price's departure, who'll generate explosiveness on offense for the Fighting Irish? And their explanation is, as C.J. Carr settled into his first season as Notre Dame's starting quarterback, Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price took the pressure off with their explosiveness in the run game. Love and Price are gone, both drafted in the first round of the NFL draft. Carr's back. Notre Dame's ready to contend heading into Marcus Freeman's 5th season. But did the Fighting Irish do enough to replace Love and Price? They say Jordan Faison is back. Notre Dame added Ohio State transfers Milan Grab and Quincy Porter. Porter won't be back from his knee injury until the summer. Micah Gilbert and Jaden Greathouse were limited in the spring. Will Devin Fitzgerald or Elijah Burris emerge? So that is on 3's question. Do you buy or sell that as Notre Dame's biggest question heading into 2026?
Yeah, I mean, it has to be Notre Dame's biggest question heading into 2026. And I think if you want to get a little bit broader, it's, because the defense is going to be top notch. They're going to have one of the best secondaries. Their defensive line is going to be deep. Their linebackers are all returning. They're going to be, doing enough, being playmakers at the second level. And so really this question becomes, what can they do offensively to separate themselves? How can they generate points and explosive plays to really run it up on teams? I think the answer is obvious that nobody is going to replace Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. It was arguably the best running back tandem last season. But I think what you're going to see is the shift from singular explosiveness to a more balanced offense that becomes and really I hate to give this kind of I think it's not a lame answer, but maybe kind of, CJ Carr is going to be the explosiveness. It's just a matter of, I don't think it's a singular guy. I think he's just distributing the ball all across the field, and they continue to make plays, out of the wide receiver core. I think Aeneas Williams is going to provide some explosive plays, but really what this comes down to is you have a group of wide receivers, Jaden Greathouse, Jordan Faison, Mylan Graham, we hope Quincy Porter, and that group of four is ultimately what's going to determine how explosive Notre Dame's offense is, because CJ Carr is capable of making every explosive throw, every explosive read. He can make any type of throw, sideline to sideline, between the hashes, whatever you need him to do. It's just, will that core four wide receivers do enough to provide that explosive ability? So I don't think it's one singular guy outside of CJ Carr. He's going to be the explosiveness. He's just going to get it to those different guys throughout the season.
Oh, absolutely. And, I agree with the concept of what you're saying. I think that obviously Love and Price had their own kind of explosiveness, and they were able to generate that. We didn't see it quite as much in the passing game. There was still something there. There was still plenty of downfield, like when you look at the yards per attempt we've talked about before with CJ Carr, between Malachi Fields and Jordan Faison. And I think, if Jaden Greathouse is 100% healthy, we know the kind of explosiveness he has. We know the kind of explosiveness that Jordan Faison has, and his ability to get open. And he's the kind of guy who can turn a little play into a big explosive play. And both Porter and Graham are guys who can bring that as well. So I agree. I think I definitely, who specifically is going to do it? Sure, that's a question, but I agree with what you're saying. I think we're going to see explosiveness all over the field in the passing game, and exactly what you said. It starts with CJ Carr's arm, because all those potential targets that he's going to have are all guys who can make explosive plays. And I think, again, that the running game is still going to be able to make explosive plays, because they're like, other teams are not going to crowd the line of scrimmage the way they tried to do last year with Love and Price, and that just naturally is going to open up more of that as well. And ultimately, teams are going to find out that you still have to respect both if you want to have any chance of shutting down Notre Dame's offense.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be super dynamic. I think the number one point that I want to get across is that as fans, we shouldn't expect a singular person to provide that explosiveness. It has to be a group effort, largely driven by that wide receiver room. And like the topic that you were kind of starting to get into about the crowded boxes, I would love for teams to start out, lighter boxes. Notre Dame and CJ Carr are doing their thing, and then you pound Kedron Young, because the last thing a defense wants to see in a light box is someone like Kedron Young running down their throat.
Bodied guy who can,
you know what I mean? Like, he's such a physical presence that it's almost inviting. Okay, we'll air you out, and you really start, being conservative to that side of playing the pass, and now we just physically dominate you with Kedron Young right down the teeth of the defense. I think that's ultimately got to be the game plan, because Aeneas Williams isn't that type of runner. He's going to provide production in the receiving game. He's going to be able to hit some runs, but he's not a between the tackle, physically punish you type of runner in a lighter box situation like Kedron Young.
Yeah, I think that, that if J1 Sider uses all three of those guys, Kedron Young, Nolan James, and Aeneas Williams, I think that there is a lot of potential there. Like when you talk about explosiveness specifically, I think all three of those guys has the opportunity to show what kind of explosiveness they have. Again, it won't look exactly like Jeremiah Love or Jadarian Price, but they've got a lot of it themselves. They just haven't had the opportunity to show it yet on game days for the most part. We're going to take a break. More rapid fire coming up. We've got NFL, we've got college football, and more on the way on Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. We continue weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Rapid fire. Plenty of topics to cover. We've hit plenty of Notre Dame football. Brian Higgins talked a little Steve Angeli, Syracuse football with us in the first hour of the show as well. Always great stuff with Mr. Higgins. Jesse Stiers is here. I'm Sean Stiers. And yesterday, Jess, we talked about the fact that the trade, Myles Garrett going to the Los Angeles Rams from the Cleveland Browns. And today, Aaron Donald told the Pat McAfee show that the Rams trading for Garrett has him thinking about coming out of retirement. That is blank.
Let me make sure my mic is turned on. That is a scary scenario, having someone like Aaron Donald and Myles Garrett lined up next to each other on a defensive line. That's like pick your poison, I don't know what you're supposed to do in that situation. And what's even scarier is I follow Aaron Donald on Instagram. I see the workouts that he does. He's clearly in shape.
He's still putting in legit work, right?
His body is still ready to go. I think the thing for him is the motor type situation. It's like, do you remember when Eric Weddle came back and basically they were like, all right, you don't got to do OTAs. You don't got to do, spring practice. You don't got to do mini camp. Just show up and play games. Like that would kind of be the scenario that I think Aaron Donald is looking for. But the thing is the Rams are clearly Super Bowl. I don't know if I'd say favorites, but they're like amongst probably two or three teams that you would say right now are the odds are best to win the Super Bowl. So that also has to play into it as well. Like Aaron Donald wouldn't be coming back to a crappy team. He'd be coming back for a team with Super Bowl expectations. So that would be a scary sight seeing, like, as an offensive lineman, could you imagine a guard and tackle having to combo Myles Garrett and Aaron Donald? Like, I don't know what you're supposed to do in that situation because both of them require a double team at the end of the day.
Right now, Myles Garrett to record 20-plus sacks and the Rams to win the Super Bowl, plus 1,300 odds.
That's crazy. That is a sucker's bet. That is FanDuel preying on a lot of people right now.
20-plus sacks.
Both of those deserve to be plus 1,000 in their own regards. That's crazy.
Yes.
I saw someone, Black Irish says gym shape isn't football shape. All I know is Aaron Donald had, I can't remember who it was to be exact, but he had some, college student, a good college football player come work out with them. All you hear about is when people get done working out Aaron Donald, they throw up. Like they are physically exhausted by his workouts. So you can't tell me that he's not in shape. It's just a matter of the motor and driving up the physicality of hitting another person consistently.
Right. And he's been retired for 2 years. So yeah, I mean, gym shape isn't football shape, but Aaron Donald was an elite, he's going to the Hall of Fame no matter what happens, where he is right now. And it wouldn't take him that long to come
but
back.
Also,
to go.
I think the other
35, so there's that. But
I think the other side of this that you have to kind of like, I don't think the expectation would be that he needs to play every down of every game. He would kind of be a rotational guy that comes in and gives you a good, let's say 20 to 30 snaps a game, like he's probably playing 50% of the snaps at most. So it would be situationally dependent.
Rams right now on FanDuel, heavy favorites to win the Super Bowl. They have plus 550 odds. Buffalo has the next best odds at plus 1,000.
Wow.
It's crazy that Buffalo has the second best odds since they have just choked year after year with one of the best quarterbacks in the league in the playoffs. But that's what the odds are right now. Rams plus 550, Buffalo Bills at plus 1,000. So interesting. Let's do a little guess the season over under win total. We haven't done one in a little while. We've only done a couple. We pick a team, we go through their schedule, and then we each guess what FanDuel has as their over under win total for the season. So we both make our guesses. We go to the FanDuel app, and we check it out. Today's team is going to be Penn State. You excited to do Penn State today?
I am excited because there's a lot going on at Penn State. Obviously the departure of James Franklin. They now have Matt Campbell, who I think is a really good coach. Henry also agrees that Matt Campbell is a solid coach. But I do think that their schedule is rather advantageous as well. Like, they don't have some of the haymakers on there outside of like USC and Michigan. And it's like, what has USC and Michigan done in the past few seasons? So I think this should be interesting. I think Penn State's going to come out on the right side of things here in year one under Matt Campbell.
Matt Campbell's first season, here's the schedule that he will face as the head coach at Penn State. They open with a home game against Marshall. Then they're at Temple, and then a home game against Buffalo. That's kind of with the exception of, as I keep saying, like a broken record, with the exception of Ohio State and Michigan. That's kind of the typical opening to a Big Ten schedule. 3 games like that. Then they go, and they host Wisconsin. They travel to Northwestern. They host USC. Wonder if the plane will be able to get in and out of there, like James Franklin always had a hard time with. Then they go to Michigan, Purdue, at Washington, Minnesota, Rutgers, at Maryland. So that's the Penn State schedule. We've looked at it. Guess the official FanDuel season over/under win total for the Penn State Nittany Lions.
Okay, so I like to do this.
Yes,
in a very
methodical way.
Correct. And so we're going to go down the schedule. And I'm going to tell you how many wins and losses, or we're going to go each game, and I'm going to count out the wins as I go.
Win. That's a loss. Go ahead.
So Marshall, win. Temple, win.
Yes.
Buffalo, win.
Yes.
Wisconsin, win. Fickle is going to get fired, and he's going to get dominated by Notre Dame.
I agree.
Northwestern, yes, they had a good season last year. I think there's enough talent that Penn State wins this one. They're going to start off 5-0.
Okay.
I think they lose to USC.
I agree.
I think they lose to Michigan.
I agree.
I think they beat Purdue.
I agree.
I think they lose to Washington.
Concur.
I think they beat Minnesota.
That's my bubble game right there. But okay, you've got 6 wins so far.
And I agree it's a bubble game, but it's at Penn State, and that'll be massive.
True.
Their home field advantage.
True.
I think they beat Rutgers and they beat Maryland. So what's that put me at?
You've got them at 8.
So I think the over-under in true FanDuel fashion is going to be set at 8.5.
You think it's going to be 8.5?
Yes.
I think it's going to be 7.5 is what I'm saying. Chris is saying 6.5. Josh agrees with me. He's saying 7.5. I think 8.5 seems like a pretty high number for a team with a lot of turnover and a first-year head coach.
But their schedule is so easy outside of just a couple tough games in the middle.
But again, so you've got them losing to USC, Michigan, Washington. Those are 3 definite losses. That puts you at 9.
Yep.
I see Minnesota as a bubble game, and I actually see Wisconsin, or not Wisconsin, Northwestern.
I struggle with Northwestern too, but I don't know how consistent Northwestern can truly be in a conference like the Big Ten.
Very true. Very true. Okay. So now, are you locked in on 8.5?
I am.
Okay, I'm going to stick with my gut and say 7.5. So I'm going to the FanDuel app. My number is 7.5, trusting my gut. Jesse's is 8.5. Penn State regular season win total. You got it. 8.5 wins is what FanDuel has.
This is why I'm the gambling guy at the end of the day.
Well done. Well done. That's my first miss of the season. I got my first 2. That's my first miss. So maybe I should listen to you next time. I don't know.
No, you shouldn't do that.
Both in the ballpark. Both in the ballpark. Penn State, 8.5 is what FanDuel has as their season over/under win total for the upcoming season.
You know, right. I still It's unfortunate. I might have to retire as a gambler here soon.
Oh yeah, is that the edict?
There's just a lot of savings that now need to take place.
Things going on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll see how that pans out. See if you try to sneak any off there.
Well, when you got that Irish breakdown salary, that kind of turns into your little secret stashed away fund.
And I don't know if I'd call it a salary. Or like
compensation.
I don't know.
Yeah, stipend might be the better word.
Yeah.
For me.
Right. Yeah, I'm not saying that. Yeah, exactly. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver told Pat McAfee recently that his league is going to use AI to help officials on replay next season. Silver says they're going to use an AI automated system similar to what tennis has, with cameras lined all around the court to automatically make out-of-bounds calls. Are you in or out on other leagues in sports doing something similar?
Yeah, this is a huge in for me. I'm the biggest proponent of, we've got all the technology in the world. Tennis uses it for in and out calls. Soccer uses it for offsides and goals if it crosses the plane. Why can't football use it for first down and when touchdowns break the plane for a touchdown? There was do you remember that season where it felt like every week the Cowboys had a controversy of whether or not the ball broke the plane of a first down or a touchdown? And they brought out a stupid index card when we have all this technology in the world. We're using a paper index card to determine.
Serator famously broke out the index card. Gene is now up in the replay booth as one of the rules analysts. But yes.
So football, use it for any sort of crossing the plane, first down, touchdown. For baseball, I didn't know this, but did you know in minor league they now have technology where they're using it on check swings to see if the batter goes around fully on check swings?
I didn't know that.
Why haven't we been using that before? I think ABS should be used more. The fact that you only get 2 challenges per game is stupid. And basketball, you can do backcourt, you can do out of bounds, you can do goaltendings to see if the ball is, hit the plane of the backboard. There's so many different things that you can do to just eliminate errors. We have the technology to. I know everyone's like, oh, well, you want the human element. There's just too much riding on all these games, and we have advanced so far in terms of technology. Why can't we utilize it?
And not only that, the reason Silver says that they're going to do that is so that they don't have to stop the game for 5 minutes while the officials look at this little monitor.
That's a great
try
point.
To determine, was he in bounds, was he out of bounds?
You get the automatic answer and the game resumes.
Yeah, play on. You don't have to stop down for 4 or 5 minutes every time. And that's the most aggravating thing in so many of these sports is when they do go to replay, you're sitting there, especially in college, but the NBA as well, you have these long breaks as they go over it, and when AI can just spit it out and tell you right away with not doing any of that stuff.
You can determine right away the 3-point line. Was the foot on the line or behind the line?
Man, Bear is coming at you. He says that I should just use AI as my co-host. He wants to know what you think of that.
Man, I've been integrating some AI recently. Maybe that's,
Who knew?
Maybe I permanently need to just let it replace me.
I guess. I don't know. I think this is a great idea, though. I think, especially in one of the worst parts about instant replay in college football is you can review any play, which a lot of people think is a great thing. But if you have AI and this AI technology helping you, you're not leaving it. A lot of these calls still become very subjective. You're not leaving it the subjectivity in the hands of the officials. You can just, it's pretty black and white to the computer. Either it is or it isn't. You don't actually have to stop down. The call is already made for you, and you find out like that, and you just move on to the next play.
I would love it in baseball too if every base had a sensor, and as soon as you hit it, the sensor basically would go off. And so you know when to stop it in time. Okay, sensor goes off. We hit pause. Is there any tag on the body? Okay, no tag. Safe or out. It should be fully utilized because it's just the human eye, even with replay, gets it wrong. And that's the most frustrating part is we stop the game, we review it for 5 minutes, and then there's been like obvious times where we're like, oh yeah, that's going to be overturned. And they're like, oh no, actually there's not enough evidence. Like, what are you talking about? I see it. You just watched it for 5 minutes. How do we not have enough, supporting evidence for this?
Bear says he doesn't understand why there aren't sensors and chips.
It's just,
I think there are, but they're just not actually using them right now. From what I've heard, they've actually been chips for a while, and they've basically just been gathering the data on how accurate it is. Have to you should ask your official friend about that at work, what he knows about chips in footballs.
Are we going to have a segment where we just have him come on and explain all the rules as a referee?
I think that would be a great idea, personally. That would be an awesome idea.
I've only been here for 6 weeks, so you got to give me a little bit of time to kind of, nurture the relationship.
I thought he was the new guy.
No, we did. So how this all came about is we had a bunch of interns start like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and we did this big office lunch, and everyone had to go around and, who you are. Okay. And the interesting fact about, all of a sudden he just wants to whip out that he's a freaking Big 12 official on the weekends.
I mean, yeah, that's whipping it out all right.
I think he'd be good for like the in season when everyone's, griping about the rules and the lack of clarity, and then he could provide some clarity.
We could have our own rules analyst on this show.
Yeah.
Like we could
breaking down plays.
We could find some of the controversial plays from different, like a Notre Dame game. If there was,
he'd be a reputable source.
He could come on and he could explain why it was or wasn't. I think this sounds like a good Tuesday segment to me, personally.
Yeah, like I said, you gotta give me time. I can't just berate the guy here.
No, I don't want you to berate him. I think all the fans will do a good job of that when they don't disagree with what he's talking about.
That's what I can't wait for. Someone to be like, "You're an idiot."
Irish for life with a little future bail money for Jesse.
Thank you.
Thank you, fans. He says,
"I'll argue with any USC fan in the bar any day of the week."
Bear says the Cowboys have plus 25,000 odds to win the Super Bowl. It might as well be 60,000. It's just there's
whoa.
I like how Jesse is the eternal optimist. He goes into every season with actual hope that something is going to change.
It's a new season. Why wouldn't you until proven wrong? Like, that's the best part.
I have hope
about being a fan.
Respectable, but that has nothing to do with actually winning Super Bowl.
They were respectable on offense. They were just putrid on defense.
The guy drinking Johnny Walker Blue his heart is still ticking right now. So as long as that's happening.
Yeah, but can't you admit that Jerry has at least broken some of his old ways this offseason?
He has. I think
okay.
Got him steered in the right direction.
Okay. Yep. See, there's that optimism that I'm talking about.
We talked on yesterday's show about whether or not Texas might back out of the Notre Dame series. Outbound brought that up. We were talking earlier. So go back and listen to yesterday's Rapid Fire. At the start of yesterday's Rapid Fire, we talked all about Notre Dame, Texas, and the possibility of Notre Dame, Texas Tech possibly becoming a thing. So a lot of stuff at the beginning of yesterday's show. I also talked in the first hour about how, Notre Dame has its own movie with Rudy. I forgot they've actually got their own 2 movies because you got the old Win One for the Gipper, Ronald Reagan playing the Gip. Notre Dame's got 2 movies. Not a lot of other, I don't think any other college football program can claim that. I mean, the only movie that Miami's got is, I guess they've got the U parts 1 and 2, but they've also got
the Netflix
Convicts, which makes them upset. So, by the way, Chris, sorry, Goose, but she's lost that love and feeling. I hate it when she does that. Dropping his Top Gun reference in for us. All right, we're going to wrap it up with that. Jesse, enjoyed it as always. Enjoy a couple days away, but looking forward to the 3-man show on Friday when you're back in with Vince and I.
Remind me I have a pet peeve I need to air out on Friday's show.
All right, I will. We will do that then. Until then, we will talk to you later. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com.